And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, to our listeners and followers. Tonight is Sunday, July 7th at 8:28 p.m. This is Federico Lines of States' Rights Radio and
Seth Hancock of Seth Hancock Reports. And tonight's discussion is modern police technology has one legal flaw, which is it can never supersede our lawful rights, and a political discussion on presidential immunity. We're going to start with a story out of Michigan that kind of leads to a broader discussion about the use of technology in general when it comes to law enforcement. But recently a court case came out of Detroit. A man named Robert Williams was wrongfully arrested. He was arrested in front of his family, his wife and two young daughters, back in 2020. He spent 30 hours in a detention center, and he was accused of stealing watches from a jewelry store. But the problem is the arrest was solely based off of facial recognition software, which was used based on camera video from a grainy camera in the jewelry store, and turns out he was not the guy. But effectively, this case, this recent lawsuit, led to Michigan has to change its law to basically prohibit police departments from basing an arrest solely on facial recognition software. And they have to do some other things, like they need to go back and take a retroactive look at all warrants that have been issued since 2017 based on facial recognition software. It's to me, it's kind of a small win for Michigan residents. I personally don't think facial recognition software should be used at all, but there are other technologies that I don't necessarily have a problem with police using, but we've become over-reliant on it, and it becomes something where it's people's rights are going to be violated because of this over-reliance on technology.
Well, yeah, Seth, in your discussion and what we talked about before on this particular case, this just comes a little bit more in treating law enforcement as a totalitarian police force and a glorified law enforcement police force. And it's just, coming from Michigan, I really find it very, very sad, because Michigan, being a very progressive state, well, they just repealed right to work, but that's another discussion. But, being a progressive state, it's very, very shocking to see that they would have initiated this type of procedure of facial recognition to anybody who is arrested or not arrested, because yet again, that constitutes a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Now, Gretchen Wilmer, I don't know if this was signed under her law or it was somebody else, she should have known better, and she should have said, we have to consider the Fourth Amendment to the federal Constitution, and I am sure that Michigan has a similar Fourth Amendment in their Constitution, where, this would constitute a violation. And, this flaw that, they have for facial recognition, what happened to this young man who was pulled over and misidentified as a robber, it's nerving, it's shocking, it's scary that, they can do that. Now, people will say, computers don't lie, they tell the truth. Well, that's not exactly true. How confident are you that this computer is accurate? It's not telling the truth. It's accurate in the information. So I really, I hope that other states don't look into this. I think Florida may have something like this, but of course, with Governor DeSantis of Florida and your few sheriffs out here, Grady Judd, which we talked about up there in Polk County, and then somebody else in Lee County. I'm sure they will love this type because they have this totalitarian regime of managing their police force. So I really do hope that law enforcement takes this very seriously and takes our Fourth Amendment seriously. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. Our rights should not be trampled by nobody, not by police, not by anybody. So we need to be careful in this and, know what your local police is doing. We all have sheriff's elections, and there's one here in Dade County. I'm not too confident about the sheriff here in Dade County. He sounds very totalitarian, very hard knocks, and I wouldn't want him in my sheriff. The sheriff's out there to protect my rights and to support my rights, and whoever's committed a crime or not committed a crime to really support their rights until that person is fully convicted by a jury of his peers. So I'm glad that Michigan had to go back to the legislature and review this law, and I hope that other states, if they do have something like this, they also reconsider, because this is a very dangerous time for our citizens in our republic.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, I think still today that, like lie detector tests are still not admissible in court. And I think that's kind of, you can use facial recognition software still in Michigan, but it can't be your sole basis for an arrest. I would want to get rid of facial recognition software altogether. I just don't like it. There's many problems, let alone it's creepy. This it kind of exposes a big problem with having this over reliance on technology and listening, I found an interview with this guy who was wrongfully arrested, and basically he was describing how the police, when he was being interviewed while he was under detention, basically the police were just shocked that he was, basically the police asked him, "Is this you in this video?" And he says no. And the cop says, "Well, are you saying the computer's lying?" And the police were just so adamant that computers don't get things wrong, and well, that's not the case. They do get things wrong. They're just computers created by human hands, and that this is a problem, and police. This is a further, the technology, this reliance on technology is a further excuse for police not to do their jobs. Police need to investigate. Okay, so whether I like facial recognition software or not, they're still going to be using it. Okay, fine. You use it and you find a suspect that you think might be the guy for something. Now you use that to go do police work and investigate and find hard evidence before you arrest him. So that's kind of that's a big problem, is that police just do not investigate. They do not do police work anymore. They just get in their head, this is the guy, and they just go and grab the guy, and this is a big problem. And I've seen it with a lot of these no-knock warrant cases, where, police get a tip that somebody's dealing drugs or something like that, and they go get a no-knock warrant, and they don't do any investigatory work beforehand, and then they just bust down a door. That's the problem. Is it just leads to police not doing their jobs, and but they're going to have it in their head that they are doing their job because, well, our job is to get bad guys off the street. Well, your job is to investigate and find the right bad guy, not just get just willy-nilly just take people off the streets. And so hopefully this leads to a further discussion on police work in Michigan and around the country. But I mean, it just exposes one of the big problems with policing today.
Well, yeah, and you mentioned lie detector tests are not. You're right. I think lie detector tests, which is early modern police technology, are not admissible because they're not 100% accurate. They do. Some of them are. Some of them are not. People have beaten lie detector tests, so they're not really accurate. But we can consider DNA back in '94 when DNA was starting to come in. The biggest case that had DNA was O.J. Simpson. Who just passed away. And, people, do I think O.J. Simpson did it? Yes, probably. I think he killed his ex-wife and Ron Goldman. Do I think that the police handled it horrible in collecting that evidence? Yes, I think so. And, whatever they did, they put Mark Furman in there, which that was a mistake. But, that's the thing is that, if police can collect bad evidence, if they can collect evidence in a horrible fashion, how can we trust them? I mean, the way they collect the evidence in the Simpson Goldman case, how can I trust them with facial recognition or thumbprints or whatever? I mean, I've seen also cases up in where they have one up in Massachusetts, and both of them in Massachusetts, where two lab technicians in dealing with cocaine and drugs, they were falsifying records, and they were doing a lot of falsifying records. So again, I know you're going to have some bad apples, but we cannot put our faith and our trust in our local community. I mean, sometimes we can and sometimes we can, but law enforcement are not to be trusted because nowadays they have, law enforcement is just out there to, see how many numbers they can say by, we arrested this, we got 200 arrests, and then, blah, blah, blah. And that's not how they're supposed to do. They're supposed to investigate. They're supposed to determine if that's the right person. For example, you mentioned no-knock warrant arrests. With the most famous case was Breonna Taylor. They said that there was her ex-boyfriend was a drug dealer, and they were gonna pursue. And it turns out that they had the wrong address or wrong number or whatever, and they didn't do their due diligence. And that's why I have no faith in law enforcement anymore. So I'm kind of glad that. Michigan again rewrote this law or is rewriting this law. Let's hope that Governor Gretchen Whitmer will be more cautious about Michiganians' rights and their Fourth Amendment rights, because that's very important. And it's very important even for the Supreme Court, which I know Clarence Thomas has never been a proponent of the Fourth Amendment, but he has to be. He has to follow his predecessor Justice Scalia, that he was a proponent for the Fourth Amendment right. So, that right is the most important part of our liberty that protects us from a intrusive government, whether federal or state. And I'm glad they're rewriting it, and that's how it should be. Legislatures should rewrite the law and amend the law or repeal the law or whatever. And let's hope they get it right, and let's hope that other states doesn't follow into this bad step of facial recognition. I'm talking to you, Governor DeSantis. So let's move forward with better protection for our citizens and to protect our rights.
Yeah, and that's ultimately the job of police is to protect our rights, even when they're when they are rightfully arresting people. They're arresting people after doing police work, and they want to get somebody off the streets who has violated somebody's rights. That's why the police are there. So obviously in this case, there was somebody who violated the jewelry store's rights by stealing his property. So the police did have a job to do and find the guy who did it. But you got to do police work. You got to find the right guy, not just rely on faulty technology.
Exactly. So let's protect our. Let's find some people that will protect our rights and protect our communities, and stop with this tallying up how many arrests you got or how many warrants you got or whatever. Let's find some law enforcement officials that will actually protect our citizens and our rights. And with that said, let's move on to our second episode, a topic for discussion on presidential immunity. We just had a Supreme Court ruling of a 6-3, defining what is presidential immunity here in the United States for the president. So, Seth, I'll let you begin first. What did you? I mean, did you take a good? Did you read the ruling, or were you following some stuff? What's your thoughts on it?
I didn't read the ruling too much of it, but I've read some of the commentary on it after, and the way I see it, I kind of like from Caitlin Johnstone. I like the way she put it. Everyone's acting shocked and outraged at the Supreme Court ruling that Donald Trump and other former presidents are largely immune from criminal prosecution, as though presidents getting prosecuted for their crimes is something that's been happening this entire time, which is, I think those who are really excited about this Supreme Court opinion are just basing it solely on their love for Donald Trump, and they think that the opinion is going to keep Donald Trump immune from certain prosecutions without thinking about the consequences for, let's say, the immunity that this might give Joe Biden or any future president. And then there's the ones who are, really scared. This sets up the president to be able to get away with murder. And the presidents have been getting away with murder for a long time. So I don't know what you're so scared of. This should lead to a greater discussion about what exactly is, because it creates some immunity based on official acts as president. And there's where the real discussion should be, is what is an official act of the president. I think anytime the president goes outside of his authority given to him under the Constitution is not an official act of the president and should be prosecuted. Presidential murders, I think of, Barack Obama. He drone striked Anwar al-Awlaki, who was accused of being a terrorist or providing aid to terrorists, but he was an American citizen who was drone struck while he was abroad without trial. He might have been guilty, but you have to give him a trial. You can't just kill him. The president's not judge, jury, and executioner. But even more disturbing is that Obama drone struck al-Awlaki's teenage son, also an American citizen who was not accused of any crimes. This is a story that didn't get much press at the time. I think most conservatives said, well, they're dirty terrorists, and then most liberals, they just love Obama, so Obama can do whatever he wants. And I think it is a major story that didn't get much attention at the time. It still doesn't get too much attention. But I think both sides of this are, they're either fear-mongering, overly fear-mongering, and then the other side is just way too excited about this. And we need to have a rational discussion, which is not going to happen when you have both sides in their emotional state.
No, that's right, and it's an emotional status of tribalism politics, as I like to always call it, because as you said, on the Republican side and the Trump side, they're screaming victory, and again, in reading this ruling, I don't see any why you would call this a victory for the Trump team or for the Republican side. And on the liberal side, the Democratic side, they're creating a sense of fear and a sense of a sense of like it's something bad's going to happen. But yet again, have they actually read? Has Trump actually read? Well, first of all, has he read anything? Has he actually read the Constitution? Which I probably think he hasn't. But the same thing with Biden or these individuals. I did print out the opinion of the court, and actually, Chief Justice Roberts, as unpredictable as he is, he does say that the president's duties are commanding the armed forces, granting reprieves and pardons for officers against the United States, appointing public ministers, consuls, justices of the court, and officers of the United States, foreign relations responsibilities, making treaties, appointing ambassadors, recognizing foreign governments, meeting foreign leaders, overseeing international diplomacy, intelligence gathering, managing matters related to terrorism, trade, and immigration. I mean, you can't get more. What he's saying is those are official acts. I mean, I know the pardons that Clinton made before he left office. And even Trump before he left office. I mean, both of them pardoned convicted criminals, Mark Rich and Dinesh D'Souza, Roger Stone, Michael Flynn. But, Congress has no authority to punish the president, to prosecute the president, because those are one of the official acts of his duties. So as much as, it's unethical it's a catch-22 on these presidential pardons, because you're pardoning a convicted criminal, but yet again, it looks kind of shady on their side. So it's a catch-22, and but as far as have they actually read this thing? Because in page 42, the Chief Justice blatantly out says, the president is not above the law, but Congress may not criminalize the president's conduct carrying out the responsibilities of the executive branch under the Constitution. But right there, the president is not above the law. So that quote that Justice Sotomayor wrote in her dissenting opinion, that, we have a king above the law, is just amateur theatrics to get the left entitled and get the left excited about the 2024 election and all that crap, because I have no interest in reading her dissent, because I think it's full of crap. I'm more, when in reading, and we'll get to Justice Thomas's concurring opinion, which I think makes no sense, but I'll leave it to Seth and our followers to take their opinion. But as I read the opinion of the court by Justice Roberts, Chief Justice Roberts, I see no victory for Trump, and I see no reason to get scared with the left. It's quite simple. I mean, it's sad that we had to have the court define these powers. I mean, it should be common sense what these powers are. But unfortunately, we're dealing with the Trump kindergarten here, and we have to, they have to be like teachers and define them for them, because they don't understand. So I just find it very sad that the court had to define these powers, because it's already there. And his official acts as pertaining to January 6th and with the 2020 election, I got news for you. That got kicked back to the lower courts to decide. The Supreme Court is not going to take it. They don't want to take it. So they give it to the lower courts to decide and make it official. They're not going to take that again. So I hate to burst that Trump bubble, but it's not good for him, and it's not good for anybody else. So let's stop this troublesome politics, and let's read the Constitution as common sense as it is, please.
Yeah, and it's again, I don't have any faith that the Supreme Court really knows what an official act of the president is. But, on the surface, I agree with the opinion. But the problem is we live in a day where, people think the president is this all-powerful king, and so anything he does is an official act, and that's the problem, and that's why we need to lay out exactly what a president has authority to do, and it's very little. I mean, and that's the problem is we've got a government that's so out of control that the president's out of control, the Congress is out of control, the courts are out of control. But on the surface, the opinion is the right opinion, and now it's about properly defining what an official act of the president is, and that's what we need to have the discussions on, and we need to have discussions on how do we limit presidential powers, because the president shouldn't be that powerful. Like I said, I still, the Obama drone strikes, I mean, that is outrageous to me, but he's never been prosecuted. To me, this opinion just maintains the status quo. There's nothing to be scared about. I mean, it just means we need to properly discuss these issues and not be wrapped up in emotion.
No, I mean, you could say that FDR's arrest and imprisonment of Japanese Americans and German Americans and Italian Americans, I would say that's not an official act of the president. I mean, without due process. So I think FDR should have been held accountable for that type of for that type of order. The Supreme Court did say that in a case in Youngstown versus Ohio, I believe, the president was found to be above his duties when he sent troops in on a private property on the mine workers. That's where Truman coined the phrase, "the buck stops here." Well, not really. The buck doesn't stop with you. The buck stops with Congress. And as you said, it's an out-of-control government, and the executive branch, the Congress, the courts. And that's where, it gets with Thomas's concurring opinion that he just focused more on the separation of powers. This is something that, many people, again, overlooked. And Thomas... Thomas did a little bit quote the U.S. versus Nixon, but they didn't really discuss it more. So again, when Nixon had his acting attorney general went and did that Saturday Night Massacre and fired the special prosecutor Archibald Cox and fired almost everybody of the Justice Department under that special prosecutor, is that an official act? I mean, again, there is no, the president can have meetings and talks with his attorney general about what cases to prosecute or what cases, the legal dockets that they're going to go over for prosecution, if that's so choose. But, the attorney general is not at the beck and call of the president. So, there is a thing called separation of powers between these branches, but I think the genius to be more certain of it is to preserve liberty is that these separation of powers must remain separated among themselves. And even though the president appoints the attorney general is in its own little separation of power from the White House to do what it thinks to preserve liberty and to preserve a clean and healthy and honest government with no infiltration from Congress or from the White House or from the courts. That's why the Ethics in Government Act in 1978 establishing the Independent Counsel, I think it was unconstitutional because it violates the separation of powers. It violates that. So, again, but then you have this tribalism politics where, in the 1980s, Democrat-controlled hired an independent counsel to investigate Reagan and his Iran-Contra deals. But then in 1996, Republicans hired Ken Starr to go after Clinton on his, alleged blowjob with Monica Lewinsky. So this is, James Madison and the and the framers of the Constitution did not encounter this sense of tribalism and partisan politics that we're seeing today. And that's the sad thing about it. We have to stop seeing as Republican or Democrat, Libertarian or Communist or Socialist or whatever. We need to focus on the Constitution alone, regardless of what party or affiliation that person has. Enough with this two-party system and all that, because that's what's driving this crazy with this ruling and Sotomayor, with her opinion and all that. It's just driving crazy about that. And we need to really just focus on the Constitution being nonpartisan and looking at the Constitution with nonpartisan glasses. And, regardless of who it is. So again, as Seth pointed out, this ruling will affect Biden, will affect Trump, will affect Clinton, will affect Obama, because all those all those presidents in the past, dead or alive, can still be held accountable for their crimes. I think most of them have done official acts, and you can go back and maybe Kucinich can file a lawsuit with Bush on his unofficial act of war against Iraq and Afghanistan. So I think, we have to start looking these things with the nonpartisan glasses and just look at it like that, because the Constitution sees no party.
Yeah, we need to understand how precedents work. I mean, that's one of the things one of the podcasters I listen to, David Knight, likes to call President Trump Precedent Trump, because he was the first president to use executive order for gun control. So he set that precedent. He set a lot of bad precedents. And people just, they don't look at, they love their tribal leader, and they don't think at all about what this might mean for future presidents. So, even if you agreed with Donald Trump's gun control executive orders, which I don't know why anybody who calls themselves conservative would, but let's say you agreed with it, do you understand that he set a precedent for Joe Biden? People are, just looking for a king, and that's the exact opposite of what America was founded as. America was founded as the king is the law, the Constitution is king, and so that's the problem with this opinion is I still don't think the Supreme Court recognizes the Constitution as being king. But, if we do have that proper understanding, then this was the right opinion. But regardless, we just need to strip the emotion from it and have reasonable discussions and stop the tribalism.
You're right, and that's a good quote. The Constitution is king, and the president is not king. Congress is not a ruling band of senators. But I do have to, again, as unpredictable as court is, even though, I think in reading this ruling, I think they are kind of saying that the Constitution is supreme. Now, depending on how you read it, but I still think that this Supreme Court has stated, quite frankly, that the president is not above the law. Neither is Congress above the law, and cannot go to president just because he wants to appoint a criminal or appoint. But yet again, if he appoints a criminal to a cabinet position, Congress has a right to refuse him and not confirm him to the post. And that's your separation of powers right there. But I do think that as much as I don't like this Supreme Court because it's very unpredictable, I do have to say that they really I rather listen more to the opinion of this court on this ruling than the dissenting opinion from Sotomayor. Because she just is rattling the mob and saying, well, he's a king and Trump is king. No, they're not saying that. I mean, has she actually, in those conference days, has she actually read what Roberts has said? I mean, geez, you get firsthand of your conference meetings, and are you paying attention? Or are you sleeping like Justice Thurgood Marshall used to do, and he used to take naps during the conference days? So is she actually paying attention? So it's just whenever these rulings come out, and on abortion, and they're saying, oh my God, now abortion is going back to the states, they're going to ban abortions in every single state. Well, not necessarily. Idaho had passed an abortion law that was struck down by the Supreme Court. And yet again, have people actually read these things? I enjoy to read Supreme Court oral arguments or rulings, because it advances my sense of intelligence, my sense of common sense, and being a constitutional scholar like me and Seth, we enjoy that. So I reckon people really start to read and not pay attention to what Jesse Waters or Sean Hannity or Megyn Kelly or Jim Acosta or Bill Maher says. Stop listening to those media pundits that make no sense, and they're just trying to get your blood boil with no sense of common sense. And start reading for your own and start understanding these things. So, I think the way that I read this opinion, in my opinion, I think they've defined it for us. And the unofficial act, they're not going to say squat, and they're going to give it back to the lower courts to decide what happened January 6th. So I think this is just a definition of what duties are, and what the official acts are, and what our unofficial acts are going back to a lower court for a further reading and ruling. So. My thing is just know what you're reading. Don't pay attention to the stupid media pundits like Bill Maher and Jesse Waters and all those morons. Tucker Carlson, give me a break, will you please? Stop listening to those idiots and listen to yourself.
Yeah, again, you're gonna sound like a broken record. Just take off the emotionalism, take off the tribalist hats, and do some rational thinking about these things, and read these opinions from a rational mindset and not from your tribalist position.
Yeah, and as much as I don't like Justice Alito, and he is super unpredictable, for example, when he cited against the First Amendment on the Westboro Baptist Church nutheads, I don't like the Westboro Baptist Church. Like what happened today, over the weekend in Nashville. They had some Proud Boys march in the streets of Nashville. I guess they were coming from Pulaski, Tennessee, so they were marching in Nashville. As much as I despise and really don't like those Proud Boys or communists or Nazis or whatever, if you're an American citizen, you have a right to your First Amendment. The Westboro Baptist Church, which Alito dissented on, as much as, they throw hatred, that's fine. I don't care. It rubs off me as it should rub off you, because, they have a right just like you have a right. You can get on a soapbox and start preaching. As they're preaching their stupidity, you preach yours. So, as much as this court is so unpredictable, and all that, I still have some type of faith. I thought that they were going to give total immunity to Trump, but apparently they did not. So I'm happy about that. Trump is still a criminal. Trump still has 34 convictions. So I'm happy with that. And, just respect other people's opinion, and we need to have a debate in this. So I know that Seth doesn't, I know that you said that you don't really care and all that, and that's fine, and it's opinion. We're having a discussion. So I think this ruling just defines what the president's role is, and I hope that for future presidents, Congress get to act a little more and do a little more impeachments than just sitting down and collecting a government check. Because we've had presidents from the past, and Seth and I have talked about it, where they've been let go of prosecutorial misconduct and impeachment. Well, they need to start rolling more impeachments on these presidents. Biden, but credible impeachments, not just stupid impeachment, credible impeachment. What really defines a misdemeanor and a crime and misdemeanor? With Trump, with inciting violence on January 6th, and I forgot the other act that Trump was initiated. Nixon was almost impeached, but he resigned. Bush should have been impeached for his war crimes. I think so. I think Bush should have been impeached, and a few other things. Don't forget, just because they're presidents, they're not immune. They can be impeached on whatever. On the No Child Left Behind Act, I would, if I was a member of Congress, I would impeach Bush on that, because I think that's a violation of the Constitution. That's infrastructure spending. I think that should be a crime and misdemeanor. Federal government has no right to spend money on infrastructure on other states. So, yet again, we need to have these discussions. And, Seth and I, some people will agree, some will disagree, but we're having this discussion. I hope people will tune more into this and will understand that we both have common sense. We both understand the Constitution.
Yeah, on that, impeachment, bringing that up, I just saw an interview with Justin Amash, who was a former congressman from Michigan, and he's currently running for Senate in Michigan. And, he was a Republican. He became a Libertarian in his final term in Congress. But he had voted for impeachment of Donald Trump, and he got a lot of flack for that because, he is a conservative libertarian Republican. He's not Liz Cheney, who's a deep state, loves the bureaucracy type. But, he said basically, he was asked about, why he voted to impeach Trump. And he's like, well, I think more presidents should be impeached. And he's exactly right. And he's like, and he noted that his vote in Congress, in the House of Representatives, was a lower bar than, say, the Senate. The Senate is there to vote on whether to convict the president on the House's impeachment, but the House side, you're just voting should there be an investigation. And I think there should be far more impeachment hearings on all presidents. And this is. And ultimately, there's this talk about, the people talking about this creates a dictator out of the presidency. Well, I'm not worried about a dictatorship because I kind of think we already have a dictatorship. And it's not the president, it's the unelected bureaucracies. And so the unelected bureaucracy is filled with people who most of us don't even know who they are, who are writing all these regulations that never go through Congress. Congress just gave them blanket authority to just write whatever regulations you want. And, we kind of already have a dictatorship. And, I think we need to stop focusing as much on these political actors who I think are practically all puppets themselves. And we need to start focusing on the unelected bureaucracies that are claiming authority to write all the rules. And so, we need to stop being distracted by the political sideshows and look at who's actually writing the rules. And it's people who have these careers and bureaucracies that shouldn't exist under the Constitution. And maybe this opinion, if we can strip out the emotion from it, maybe we can use this to start discussing how to shut down these unconstitutional agencies and look at who the real dictators are, and it's not the president.
No, it's that you're right. And a further note on impeachments and all that. I mean, Bill Clinton lied on their oath. Okay. I mean, is that really clearly defined of a crime and a misdemeanor that he lied on their oath? I mean, I think they were just trying to get Bill Clinton to impeach on something because they couldn't get him on Whitewater or Chinagate, so they got him on a blowjob. And I think it was stupid. I mean, a credible crimes and misdemeanor of a president is what we need. And as Justin Amar says, I think more presidents to be impeached. Absolutely. I think, they need to watch the White House, know what they're doing. And Congress does it too. Congress can impeach the new member of Congress and can throw him out. They just threw out George Santos. I don't know. I guess because I don't know why. The guy was a crook. But, I think they need to look more into that. Or, for example, this is the sense of tribalism. I'm more upset about, Hunter Biden's conviction on a federal gun charge because he lied on their oath on a federal background check. I know Seth has pointed out a comment from Thomas Massey, Congressman from Kentucky, saying that I am more mad about Hunter Biden's conviction than Trump's conviction because that he lied on a federal gun background check. I mean if you're a gun nut or if you're a Second Amendment proponent, you would be upset about that and you would be cheering Hunter Biden as a hero. Yeah, well, he lied on a form, but it's in a federal gun form that should not even exist. So, that's a sense of tribalism politics that we have now. So, with going back to this presidential immunity, we need to stop looking as a Republican or Democrat, just seeing them as who they are, individuals, and are they worthy of my vote? Are they worthy to continue running this country, whether Trump or Biden? And quite frankly, no. They're not worthy of my vote. I'm not giving my vote to either of them because they're not worthy of my vote. I don't want them. So, I can think for myself. I can see them as two crooked individuals, one older than the other, but they're still crooks that will not get my vote. So I will abstain again because I have common sense and I don't sink into this tribalism war of politics that we've sunk to. And then one last thing on the that we are living in a dictatorship, as Seth pointed out, with this unelected bureaucracy. Don't forget the Supreme Court shut down an ATF bureaucratic rule on bump stocks that they want to classify bump stocks as a machine gun, and the Supreme Court said no. But yet again, you have an executive order that bans bump stocks. So which is it? I mean, it's not classified as a machine gun, and the ATF, an unelected bureaucratic agency, made it so, or you want to make executive orders unconstitutional. So, it's very sad that we live in this type of country. But, my main concern is, don't listen to the pundits. Listen to yourself. Read upon yourself to know the facts and draw to your own conclusions, not to the conclusions of the media pundits or whoever, but to you. You are the voice here. And so listen to yourself.
Yeah, and think for yourself. And, just, read through it. Don't listen to the talking heads. Just read it yourself.
And with that note, we wish you a good week ahead, and we'll be back hopefully next Sunday. With that note, have yourself a great night.
Good night.